Thank you all for coming. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Boston Office 365 user group. I see a few new people here, which is good, and a couple regulars. If you don't know, there's pizza out there, but it looks like most of you know about that. Really excited to share that we have a new logo. That sticker that you have in front of you is our new logo. It is not live on the website yet. We actually don't have a website right now. We're between websites. We're seeing other people. So hopefully the next week or two we'll have a brand new website with this logo featured. So take the sticker, stick it on stuff. There's extra stickers up front if desired. For those of you online, if you really want a sticker, you can give me your mailing address and I'll mail you out a sticker. Why not? Awesome. So who are we? Dimitri, Mike, and myself. My name is David. We are the organizers of the user group. We've been doing this for almost 4 years. We'll be celebrating 4 years next month. And we're all pretty... No, that's a lie. I'm really active on Twitter. The other two are not, but I know they check Twitter. So if you want to mention them or something, you can do that. Real quick show of hands. Real curious about how you all heard about us. Just so we know that we're chasing down the right channels and avenues on how to attract and kind of keep people coming. How many of you just from Eventbrite? You're on Eventbrite and you came across? Okay, awesome. LinkedIn, you saw a LinkedIn post of some sort. Does anybody use LinkedIn for real social networking? No, right? It's just your resume and then you hope other people. Okay. Meetup. Found us on Meetup. A couple there. Awesome. YouTube, found our YouTube channel. Really awesome. Yes, I'm pumped. Thank you. That's only been up for a couple months now, maybe since November. So that's exciting to hear. Heard about us through Twitter. Sweet, awesome. Thank you. Facebook.
Comrade.
There's only like 22, 23. Easy, Arthur. There's only 23 people liking that Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, we're there. We post a lot of updates there, so please feel free to like us. My ego depends on it, so I know it's effective. How many of you are on our mailing list? Cool. If you're not, you will be after this. And found us through our website, just search engine searching for Office 365 Boston. No. And then a friend or a colleague told you about it? Awesome. Awesome. I should buy them a beer. But I'm not. So, awesome. Thank you for that. Last month, we had a session on why Microsoft Flow and Power Apps rock, presented by myself. The video is up on YouTube. It is 2 hours. Well, the video as a whole, I think, is 2.5 hours. My session was 2 hours. I just kept going. But you all, this room was full. You all were very much... attentive and paying attention, which I greatly appreciated. Nobody was throwing stuff at me or telling me to stop, so I can keep talking forever. But so that is online. Again, we went through what Flow is and some basic flows that I've built and used, and we created a brand new flow, and then also with Power Apps, kind of explaining what it is, how it works, some tips and tricks. So part of our group is the Office 365 updates. There's a ton of stuff being published by Microsoft. All the microphone's muted. Okay, how's that? I bet that's going to work a lot better.
There we go.
Yeah, all right, cool. So the custom data types, they have it for Stock Exchange and the geography stuff. So pretty cool to start playing around with that, being able to build out our Excel files a little bit better. Without having to necessarily know where the data is coming from. OneNote. So this is interesting. Microsoft is going to be pushing OneNote for Windows 10 over OneNote 2019. So when you install Office 2019, your Windows 10 device will default to the local version of OneNote for Windows 10. Because that's the better experience. Microsoft's trying to consolidate both these apps into one app and have one set of code to manage, which is a kind of a great idea. But so just be aware of that. I'm at a client now where we're pushing out OneNote, just OneNote 2016. And I shared this with them, and they got concerned because the UI is going to change dramatically between 2016 and the Windows 10 version. Microsoft does word this, though, saying That second line, 2016 as the default OneNote experience for both Office 365 and Office 2019. The default may imply that OneNote 2019 is still going to be there, but it's going to default to the OneNote for Windows 10. I don't know. So just be aware this is coming, especially if you're using the click-to-run bits or the Office Pro Plus from Office 365. Anybody using the native news feed in SharePoint online? Okay, cool. Well, Microsoft's going to retire it and force you to use Yammer, Teams, something else, but no one here is using that, so we don't have to worry about it. The new SharePoint Admin Center is coming soon. It has been enabled for target release clients already, and basically the site management UI looks like they've made it a SharePoint list. So you can do filtering, you can search for your sites now. So if you have like hundreds and thousands of sites in your tenant, you can filter that down and even save your views. So you can create a view grouped by certain type of information. Yes?
The biggest change on this is it now displays teams.
Oh, good. And it brings in teams.
Teams and groups.
Awesome.
So
Sweet.
I've seen this. This is already rolled out to a couple of my clients.
Awesome.
It's been very helpful already.
And you can export it to CSV, which is nice. New updates between SharePoint and Teams. So I don't see this in my Teams tenant, this first one yet. But when you add a new tab in Teams, you should be able to see this new SharePoint tab option, the blue bottom left there. And then you can pull in a page from the SharePoint site that's behind your Teams. It kind of gives you a more seamless experience between Teams and SharePoint. I don't see it on mine yet. I thought we were first target, early release, whatever they're calling that. So yeah, I don't know. Has anybody else seen this new tab option yet? SharePoint and Teams? Okay.
Checking now.
But I have seen the second one is in that you can have a connector set up to your news feed for the SharePoint site. So as you add news to your SharePoint site, it auto posts to your Teams site. Which I was doing before with a flow, so it's nice that they now have a connector that'll do this for us automatically. And continuing the topic of Teams, Microsoft continues to bring Skype for Business functionality into Teams. You'll be seeing your contact list from Skype for Business in your Teams list. Unified presence between the two, so now you don't have to say I'm gone in two. You can just do it once and it'll be unified, which is really nice. Skype for Business interoperability and guest access has been rolled out. I think it's been about a month or two now, a month and a half now, but they keep reminding us that guest access is available in Teams. And this is pure guest access. You can invite anybody with an email address. They don't have to have a Microsoft account or an O365 account. There's a new admin center that's going to bring together Teams and Skype for Business into a single admin center. I don't know what the release is on that. I don't see it on there. Yeah, I don't see it on there. But that should be coming soon if it's not out already. Is a new Microsoft 365 Security Compliance Center, which is going to let you manage Office 365, Windows 10, your enterprise mobility, and security all on one dashboard, which is really nice. How many of you are using Microsoft 365? Cool. All right. Awesome. So keep an eye out for this. I don't know if this is out yet. I should have did better homework. My apologies. But the link's down below. You all will get this deck and an email in a couple days. So, preview of privileged access management in Office 365. It's in preview. So this is basically building approval workflows around administrative functionality, because your admins have global access to everything, and you can kind of set up policies to allow approval. So there's a second set of eyes, someone else managing that data or the configurations with you. So your admins can't just go crazy and start changing everything because they want to. Not that we would ever. We have a bunch of other interesting facts here. We have a lot of updates, so I didn't want to make slides for all this. Compliance Manager is now in GA. Office 365 capabilities for defending against cybercrime, Service Trust Portal for privacy GDPR, events-based retention is now GA for advanced data governance, and there are now retention policies for Microsoft Teams. Whole lot of stuff. Multi-geo is now available, so you can have a single tenant and have satellite tenants located in multiple data centers. Really nice for those people who have the data residency requirements. Right now, it is only Exchange Online and OneDrive. They are working on getting SharePoint Online and groups into that as well, but I would expect that is definitely going to be coming. There's no timeline yet on that. Anybody have this requirement, the data residency? What's the matter?
No, I'm working so hard to get that to work on the
Okay.
old version of SharePoint and on-premise with multi-farms.
Right.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. This was all me. Yeah. This one was all me. Yeah. Anybody using Stream? Couple of yous. Okay, cool. Bunch of new updates coming with Stream. You can edit transcripts in the timelines. You can manage permissions a little bit better. Cloud recording for Microsoft Teams. So when you set up a meeting in Teams, when you record that meeting, that recording goes straight to your Stream account. Unlike Skype for Business, which you have to wait for it to download locally, and then it has to do a bunch of processing nonsense. They're going to just stream everything over to Stream, and then you get the transcription and all that other fun stuff natively. So that's a fun update.
So David, if you put all that together, it goes from like, I thought we talked about this in the meeting, to we recorded the meeting, we have a transcript of it. You
Right.
said this 6 minutes and 23 seconds into our meeting last Tuesday. It changes the game a little bit.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And more stuff. Any of you all using Outlook Groups app on your mobile or pushing your users to use that? Microsoft's going to be retiring that app because the Outlook mobile app has groups in it now. So they're moving the groups functionality to the Outlook app and going to retire that groups app. So something to be aware of if your users are using that. You can, I think that's still preview. Planner tasks in your Outlook calendar. So you can basically access your planner tasks through an iCal file and then open that up in Outlook and then see all of your tasks on your personal calendar. So you can kind of keep a view as to what the heck you're doing. There's some Yammer use cases here. I think it's funny, but I'm going to back up a little bit. How many of you are using Yammer? Okay. All right, cool. I'm glad I asked. So there are some good use cases here. Microsoft's providing use cases to help further the adoption and the loyalty to Yammer. Worthwhile checking that out, especially if you're not using Yammer and you're thinking, why would I bother using Yammer? Take a look at some of these use cases. And SharePoint Hub Sites is rolled out to targeted release. Nothing on GA yet on that, I don't think. But a hub site's basically a single site collection that's going to collect multiple site collections under it. So you can land there and get like a roll-up of the data and the information and global shared navigation across all of your sites.
And shared themes.
And shared themes. Cool.
Telescope news.
Yeah. We put this up every month. I refreshed the screenshot today because something changed on it. I think one of the icons changed at the top, so I refreshed it. But this is Microsoft's Training Center. There's a lot of good resources here. A lot of nice little like under 5-minute video clips on features, on tooling, on like why Teams and how to use Teams effectively or Excel, things like that. This middle section where it says see great ways to work, those are Word files you can download and rebrand to fit your company, and they're quick tips and tricks for some of the core Office applications. And finally, I just learned about this because I was begging Microsoft. This site allows you to see every single update Microsoft has released for Office 365. So you can filter it on the left, dating all the way back to 2015, and see when they rolled out certain updates. So if you're questioning why don't we have the update, or is it here yet, or when did we get this, and all of that. I needed it because the client's still on 2013. And they're like, why go to 2016? So I'm trying to find the nice features that they will like in 2016. So I'm going through this year by year. So much fun. All right, that's it for the updates. Big thanks to Turn Digital. Sorry, the logo's blurry. For being a platinum sponsor. So we now have a platinum sponsorship, and Turn Digital is going to help us financially for the year. Not covering everything, but helping us out with a lot of the back office bulk stuff. So we are still looking for session sponsors, one-off sponsors per session. But big thanks to Dimitri and Turn Digital for kind of helping cover some of the other back office expenses that we really need to pay. Like
Food.
in the food, yeah, in the food. And without further ado, the main event. Come on down.
All right, start here. I'm going to move a little, so just make sure if you lose me on audio online, just let me know. I'd like to move around a little bit. I see a lot of familiar faces. I see a lot of friendly faces. They're not necessarily the same group. There's some overlap, but that's okay. My name's Mike Gilronan. I'm really excited. If you're expecting a 400 level technical conversation, you're not going to get it tonight. If you know me, and I'll kind of go through the introduction. I'll give you a little bit of background. I'll explain the angle that we took. So this will be interactive. I think we're good as far as online. We will make the slides available through the group. This is important. What you're hearing comes from me and me alone. I am self-employed. I work as a contractor for a large organization. Some of what we've done for them you will see in this presentation. I've redacted what I'm showing you so that you're not seeing personally identifiable things. That's important for compliance reasons, obviously. So here's our agenda. We got intros, we got housekeeping set. We're going to do really three things. We're going to set the stage. We're going to talk about how we got to the solution that we got to, what we did, and then we're going to walk through the solution and just kind of the composition of it. So anybody from Philadelphia here? I'm from Philly originally, and that's right. You got a little Philly in you. All right, cool. There is on the 76ers, the basketball team. There's a player called Joel Embiid, and his nickname is the Process. And the Sixers fans now are in the playoffs are chanting, "Trust the process, trust the process." So this conversation is about the process. We're going to talk as much about the process as we are the solution. So by way of background, I'm not an engineer. I'm not a developer. I'm a recovering CPA and project manager. I no longer maintain any of those certifications. That's an awful lot of work. It's not really my focus, but I am very committed to and focused on Microsoft. So I'm coming up on 20 years focused on the Microsoft channel here in New England. SharePoint for about 12 of those, very focused on that, and obviously Cloud Apps since it was BPOS. Mid-market focus. I had the opportunity when I worked as a CPA just to go work on Bell Atlantic for 11 out of 12 months of the year, and I said no, I'd rather work with these emerging mid-market companies. They're just more dynamic, they're more exciting, you can get things done. And I say that because until last year, that was my whole career. I consciously decided that, and now I've been working for a 22,000 person organization for the last year. So there's an asterisk there, but it's cool to see how the other hand work. So two of the big themes, and Mark, I told you I'd quote you in this. I don't even know if you remember that. You and I were sitting on the floor at the back of Sarah Hassi's presentation about Best Buy and Ninjas, SharePoint Ninjas, at SharePoint Conference 2014. And I've remembered this forever. The very best case studies start with, "It's too late for me, save yourself." Right? So here's all the things we did wrong. And I'm going to tell you about those so that you learn from my mistakes in building this and you don't make the same ones that I made. So Edison was maybe a little bit more elegant in the way he said it, but Mark's here, so tip of the cap to Mark for that. So
I'm actually on the same slide as Edison.
Edison, Anderson, Tesla, Salk. Okay.
Well, thank you.
You're in the pantheon. So the business challenge we're talking about. This is for my client, a large global pharmaceutical company, so highly regulated, public, FDA, there's a lot of reg happening, and ethics are important. I mean, ethics are important for a lot of reasons for a lot of companies, but being able to document and demonstrate how you maintain your organization's ethics is incredibly important for them. So this was the initiative, right? So there's obviously some technology to support it. We built for them. They were one of our early requests for a modern communication site. We have, at this point, hundreds of modern comm sites for them. They were an early one. And there's a specific section for managers. So managers are expected to not only be highly ethical, but to transmit those principles to the people who work for them. So the first thing that they did was they built a quiz to say, how ethical are you? Right? You got to start from somewhere. Let's baseline this thing. and understand, are people consistently exhibiting the kinds of ethical behavior that we expect from our employees, right? And how do you know if you don't measure it, right? We manage what we measure. So the quiz started out like this. It was 25 questions. It was in Excel. 5 possible answers to each question. Anybody? I never knew this. My wife does surveys for a living. Does everyone know the Likert scale? Yeah, see, the communications professionals like, oh yeah, sure, Likert scale. 5 options, like never, rarely, sometimes, kind of often, all the time. That's a Likert scale, right? It's usually 5, and it's usually that type of range, right? Low, medium, high, and 1 in the middle of each. Little fun fact right under that. We rated the answers. The answers were scored like you got for every A you answered, you got 1 point. For every B, you got 2 points. That's important because some of the challenges that we found in how to score quizzes using forms, we tripped over some of this stuff. We'll talk about it. So then you add them all up, and it works. Well, we'll come to the survey itself. This is the page where it lives, and on it in the red square is the Manager Resource Center. When you go through the Manager Resource Center, originally you came to an Excel-based quiz that looked like this. I wanted to show this off because there's some things that don't translate particularly well from this to forms. For example, I have a header. The header is be positive, set the tone, like a section header in the survey. Those don't really exist in forms. Yeah, we had to do other things to make that work. So we found a lot of challenges like that. Another challenge was the scoring. So the scoring is like a Cosmo quiz. Everybody's ever been in a Cosmopolitan magazine, and you take this survey to see, or the quiz to see if you're the world's greatest lover, and you score from 18 to 25, you're awesome. So this is how we did it, right? You'll see the key. This was an important requirement to gauge people and gauge the score this way. I covered it up. It shows it like with the cover over it, so it's a PG-13 user group. And then once the survey is completed, users get their score emailed to them and then are sent to the assessment results, so you can see kind of where you stack up, right? So this is the kind of the whole circuit I'm showing you now. So this is where people end up, and then on this page, of course, are materials for, hey, if you were soft in a particular area, you can learn about these, learning and remediation types of materials. So, quick solution walkthrough. I'm going to demo for you kind of how those pieces work together, and then we'll deconstruct it a little bit. So this is the fun part. I toggle out of here, and we're going to start online here. So I'll just drag this into the screen for you. And nope. Take 2. Here we go. So if I try to maximize it on the screen, it pastes it to the other screen.
You get the left-hand corner.
If I take it all the way in.
There you go.
All right.
There you go.
I told you this wouldn't be a 400 level technical presentation, right? So we use Microsoft Forms, and who here has used Forms to create a simple quiz or survey? Those of you get both hands up. Dave presented this at length and probably in a lot more depth than I'm going to give you in the last presentation. But I'll start from the Forms console, and you can see all of the forms that I've created here, and a lot of them were just for testing purposes. If there are forms that other people have created and shared with me, I would see them here, or ones that I'm part of, or group forms that I've created. So I created Everything Ethics Leader Self-Assessment. One of the great things, and this I think worked to our advantage, you probably heard about it from David, if you were part of it. When I preview this, if I want to see how it looks on a mobile device, this was one of the great benefits. So picture trying to do this with Excel, that prior Excel document on a mobile device. So Forms very nicely translates these things to a mobile form factor for us and gives me the ability to preview it in line right here. So I can actually step through this. I won't for purposes of this. Very simple. You can see my scale. One of the challenges that you'll see Let me go back. I think I'm blocked here. Yeah, the settings. So one of the challenges was that I could not create section headers, right? I have the ability to edit questions. I can put into each question a subtitle. That is how we kind of dummied up the section headers, right? But the challenge with that is I might get 5 questions that have the same exact wording in the question, but the subtitles are going to vary from question to question. I do not yet have the ability in forms, this is a limitation we found, to create section headers. So if I want to track, if section 1 tracks how I run meetings, and section 2 tracks how I work with my team to get trained in what, I don't have the ability to do that today in forms. Didn't want to show you that. That's the preview. So this is what the form looks like, and you saw screenshots of where it comes from and how it works. Let me go back to. Nope. Sorry. So the guts of the solution, there are 4 main components to the solution. I know this doesn't look like it shows great here. Forms to drive the survey and the quiz, right? It gave us that mobile client. It gave us a really easy to use form factor. It's super simple to create. Microsoft Flow we use to automate the scoring. So if we were able to get the scoring the way we wanted it right in forms, we never would have used Flow. But Flow gave us a lot of options, and as we learned pretty early on, Flow has a lot of out-of-the-box connectors to forms. Part of the updates presentation that you got here about all the things that have changed in Office 365, I feel like you could do a separate one on Flow and Power Apps. Like every time I go in there, there's a new connector to a different service or a different application. So we had some out-of-the-box forms in Flow to automate the scoring. If we had been able to simply within the form render the score and then direct people to where we wanted them to go, we'd have done that. You cannot do that in form. When you create the form and you finish it, it basically says, thanks for completing your form, submit another form, and there's no way to edit that. So we ended up having to direct people to the site where that key lives, send them an email with their score. So I don't have everything self-contained in forms. We had to use a few of these apps together. And because of the complexity in scoring and the way we did it on a scale of 1 to 5, and then I total them up, and then I get a range, etc. I'll show you what we did, the iterations of trying to calculate the scores within the forms and the flow, and it was painful at the time. Some of this stuff just isn't very mature. It's very new. So we ended up taking it out to SharePoint, dropping the results from every result from a form into a SharePoint list, calculating the score of the calculated column, and using a flow to push that result out to the person who took the quiz. So I'll show you a lot of ways we failed or just ran into roadblocks based on limitations in where the technology is right now. And this is a classic example of if I had it to do again today, I probably would take a different approach because there are tools that exist today that didn't exist 3 months ago, I think, when we started doing this. So the pace is pretty fast. So in the process, here's the first iteration. We're like, all right, start with forms, let's bang it out. Love the UI, love the ease of creation. All sorts of quizzes and surveys. Mobile we talked about, the connectors we talked about. Can also set them up as anonymous or tracked. This will become important for us later. We don't want to capture any more personal information than we need for any longer than we need it. So GDPR compliance is a very hot button for our organization. Who else is being bitten by GDPR right now? Great drain on people's resources. Familiar with that acronym? Is that what it stands for? So that's an important piece for us. We want to maintain anonymity where we can, but you can't email somebody their results if you don't have their contact information. So that's a challenge. SharePoint friendly, it works like and with some of the native apps, but I'll also talk to you about some of the limitations there.
Can I just ask how many employees that company had?
22,000.
What was your
The audience for this?
return on this percentage you took it? Or was it mandated?
It was not mandated. It was targeted at just a group of managers. So it was probably fewer than a few hundred.
And what kind of return did you
I think everybody who was directed to it. It was part of the, I don't know if it was, I think it was the annual kickoff or the sales kickoff, where senior executives were on stage presenting this initiative to the rank and file and making sure that it was kind of emphatically enforced. So like the people who were directed to do it did it, for sure. Now, I can't prove that because we don't preserve that information. It's there, but it's not there for us to, that's not important to us in doing it. The important thing is that they get the feedback and they get the corrective action. But it's a good point. So you saw the friendly UI, the ability to create questions in forms a bunch of different ways. I don't want to spend too much time on this. If you saw David do this last week, you can allow multiple answers. You can make answers required or optional. You can enforce branching in your questions. Yes?
Talk as much as you want about forms. I did flow.
Okay.
Power apps.
Okay, so the flow
Yeah.
part. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So, I mean, you saw it on my screen, a really simple UI for these different ways of rendering the questions. If you want to do something that's more in the form of a survey, you can give people the ratings here and the stars. If you want to do it via multiple choice, you can do it. It's very, very simple kind of look. It's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry.
Awesome.
It's very intuitive, right? It's very simple and very intuitive to create. It's also, we talked about natively mobile friendly, and I can get that preview in line really quickly. Let's see it. It's SharePoint friendly to a degree. There are native web parts for embedding, or actually not native web parts, I don't think. I think it's just an embed. I'm pretty sure it's just an embed that you do. The challenge with us is that we had a 25 question survey, and the scrolling was awful. So the scroll bar that you see here and navigating through the screen with that, it's pretty bad in line. So I'd rather point people to the form on its own page separately. But if you try and embed it in like a 2/3, 1/3 layout page, it's not real attractive or easy to use. So it's good, but it's there's parts that are not great. One of the other cool things about forms, especially if you preserve the respondent's information, is the ability to go back and do analysis on who responded, how long they took to do it, what their answers were for each question, etc. If you make these not anonymous, you can track a ton of information on this. I think forms was originally, and if any of the folks on the 365 team know, I think it was originally built for the academic community, right, to deliver quizzes and give people that in line. So that's a great application of it, but you can do an enormous amount, whether it's survey or quiz or whatever, and the analytics that you get back here are cool. You'll also notice you can, on the screen, you can also dump them out to Excel and get a nice, and very nicely formatted workbook of the summarized results. So some of the challenges with, oh, go ahead, Jen.
I was just wondering, on the last slide that you had, it showed the pies. Is there any ability to change it from one type of chart to another? No.
WYSIWYG. Well, you see what you get. Now, again, the good news is there's an export to Excel button, and you can make whatever kind of charts you want, right? I mean, that's definitely, go ahead.
There's no way either, on the horizon until I do it to save it. You have to do it in one sitting down.
Sorry, I don't
To
understand.
save the form and then go back to it. You can't do that.
Oh, that's a good question. The question is, can you save a form that's in process, right? If you have,
Yeah.
if I have a 25 question form and my phone rings on question number 10 and I gotta go, I think I lose my place. I don't think there is an ability to save an in process form today. Does anybody know differently? I haven't seen it.
I think it may stay open though, because we were getting some really funky times ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Times, like
If they
two
leave it,
questions and it took them 20 minutes,
Yeah.
if they leave it open, the timer keeps going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that.
You
that's
stay in the
true.
same session, but I don't think you can save your session,
Right.
take, reboot your machine and go back in. I think you lose your context if you do that. So some of the bumps that we hit in the road the scores would not calculate working right within Microsoft Forms this way. The challenges I told you about the groupings of the questions, that didn't work precisely the way we wanted, but it was good enough. Showing scores in line with the quiz. We just wanted people to have one UI, right? Go through, submit all my answers, and get a screen pop that says, congratulations, you got a 76. Go here if you want more information. Not possible the way we scored these. And again, tracking the minimum data required to do the job. That's kind of a recurring. So we tried a second iteration of the process. We incorporated forms and flow because, hey, there's some pre-built flows for Microsoft Forms. Let's give that a shot. It recognizes the basic objects of a question and an answer, etc. You can use it to calculate the score. You can use it to fire off an email to the person who took the quiz or the survey. But, and this is where my not being a developer, I won't say it bit me, but the developers I talked to in the process were like, yeah, you're going to run into an issue when you get above 16 questions because you can't sum the values of the answers. So each question, I have 25 questions, each answer has a numerical value to it, right? A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, D is 4, E is 5. Although if I were a developer, A would be 0, B would be 1. Lesson learned. You can calculate that score and manage it all within the flow, up to 16 arguments. You can only nest the add functions, and I didn't know this, Mark. I don't know if it's an explicit limitation.
Who would do that? Why would you need more than 16?
Because I have 25 questions. I need to be more, we need to be more succinct on the questions. So that second one on the right hand side here, the limits to the nested add statements. So I have an add statement, but I don't have a sum function in Flow. So I was really hoping for a sum function. Those adds get ugly fast. I'll show you the unfortunate, this is what it ends up looking like if you try to do all those add statements together. That was not great for us. So we still ran into that. The other thing with the Flow by default, unless you have another connection, the email comes from the person who created the Flow. So everybody who got this originally until we created a new service connection got something from me. And they're like, who the hell's Mike Gilronan? And why do you know about how ethical I am now? It wasn't a great outcome. So we sniffed that out in testing and kind of squashed that. So that was our second iteration, and this limit was the challenge. So now we've got a good enough UI for the quiz or survey. All right, it's mobile friendly, it's SharePoint friendly, all that. We can get the questions good enough. We get the questions and the formats. We can't do sections the way we want, but you can manage that with question and subhead under the question. The scoring was still our problem. David?
We have a question online. Is Microsoft working on Forms to evolve it further? Currently, it's just too basic, and out-of-the-box survey lists can provide better surveys.
So the question is Microsoft working on Forms to enhance it? Because it's so limited right now. I don't know. I've never done a detailed comparison with a survey list versus Forms. I don't even know if I have surveys in modern sites. I've never tried to do one. I haven't used a survey in SharePoint in a long time, actually. But what you saw when I pulled up Forms to show you it, it still says in the upper left-hand corner preview. Like Forms is still very much a preview product. We are finding the limitations of that, certainly that we would expect. We know we're early, but yeah, I think Microsoft is definitely investing. Like I saw something new in Forms today it was in Flow that I'd never seen. But I expect that there will be a lot of updates to this, but this is just early phase.
Another question there, and I don't know the answer either, is that you could have gone with Power Apps, so I'm wondering how much they're skewing their development toward Power Apps.
That's a good point, Mark. Right?
I don't have any knowledge. I'm just
sure. That's a fair point. Just for folks.
A totally blank canvas, you can do anything with, as opposed to Forms, which is a little more.
Right.
Could be better.
Right. For me, Forms is better because a blank canvas is not a good thing for me. I like to have that little, some cinder blocks stacked on each other. But Mark's point is a good one for the folks on the audio and video. Mark suggested that Power Apps might be, there's certainly an area of investment for Microsoft too. Right? We're seeing Microsoft
they will be doing
pound resources into that. Yeah. Exactly. So something we got as a nice byproduct when we started using Flow is Flow Analytics. And I hadn't seen this before today. I don't know if it's new. So David, I don't know if you presented this in last month's meeting, because I went in for the first time today to look at my Flow history for a flow that I've run. And I saw a Flow Analytics button in there for the first time. And it pops open a Power BI dashboard where I can see statistics about how this flow has been run over history. Is that new? Or is it just new to me?
I think it's pretty loose.
Okay. Yeah, that was a nice byproduct of kind of integrating Flow into this to start to get some analytics on this. So we're still up against this scoring thing, right? So we come to iteration number 3. And this is, at this point, it's, Mike asking the developers on his team, what do you think? I'm looking at options here, and I ultimately ended up just spending a Sunday afternoon banging through this and saying, the easiest way to do this is probably going to be to just bang the forms information into a SharePoint list, because once it's in a SharePoint list, I can do a lot of things with it. So we drop the information using Flow from the form into a SharePoint list, which let us do some simple things. Scoring was relatively easy. Like I said before, if I were smarter, I'd have had A be 0, B be 1, C be 2, etc. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now if I have 25 questions and a scale of 1 through 5, the highest possible score is 125, but I want 100. So I had a calculated column to total scores up, and then another calculated column to round down 80% of what the actual score was. So again, lessons learned, right? It's too late for me. Save yourself. We were lucky or fortunate in that we found that there are flows already built to get data from forms into a SharePoint list. That made a lot of our work easier, and there are pre-built flows to get data from that SharePoint list emailed to quiz takers, and to wait for a prescribed amount of time and then delete the items in the SharePoint list. So I start to attain some of my GDPR compliance this way, although I haven't found yet a similar function to eliminate the information that still lives in forms. So it goes away from this list, which was cool. So we talked about the rounding, we talked about the more moving parts. It was a little tedious. So the final product looks like this. Final product, you saw the UI for the self-assessment. We have a flow in the middle of the process that pushes those survey results to a SharePoint list and emails the user the results from the list. And then we have a SharePoint list with calculated columns to calculate the score. So relatively straightforward once we figured out what some of the limitations were in both forms and flow that we tripped over time. A couple things we didn't try, but probably could have. I was talking to David about this earlier. Probably could have created an Excel sheet backed by a forms, a form, Microsoft Forms. Hadn't done that. Probably should experiment with that. And I learned this week that there is a new capability to call back into Power Apps from Flow that would have made a Power App an even better solution for us. So I was talking to our lead architect about that, and that was something that we have something basic in place right now. We have, in fact, the flow goes and cleans up after itself in the SharePoint list, but not yet in the form. So somebody's manually doing that each week. So this was that last step. The initial release, the manual job to go delete that. We quickly added the delete step to the flow to clean up the SharePoint list, but it's still a manual process to do that in forms. So what did we learn? Right? Learned a couple things from this. We learned there's some really interesting use cases for forms and for flow. One that I saw this week for the first time: external sharing requests. So the way external sharing gets managed in modern team sites, modern communication sites, has evolved a great deal recently. We built a form to be the front end for that process. So if somebody has an external sharing request, they want to make a team site available to an external partner, they go in, they fill out this Microsoft form. There are capabilities in the flow behind that let us make updates to Azure Active Directory. So we can toggle that property basically of external sharing allowed equals yes kind of thing. That's a much more complex flow than my pay grade generally entails. But it's in place, it's in line, it's working really well. I think we will use this for recertification of users. So I don't know if any of you do this in terms of governing your intranet or your team sites. We're in the process of implementing a 6-month certification process where you have to go in if you are a site owner and you have to certify that you are going to continue to use this site. This site is still valid. If no one steps up and claims it, that site is going to be deleted over time in accordance with our records information management policies. So we don't get the level of clutter that we are currently cleaning up in some of our work. We're also going to certify users. So there's certification of sites and there's certification of users. For users to go in, and whether it's through our LMS, our learning management system, or a simple attestation kind of form for people to go in and say, I have read, understand, and agree to abide by the terms of service, blah, blah, blah. We capture that, that gets stored, and then 6 months later, we use a flow to kind of recertify people. So those are kind of some forms use cases that we saw. Flow we're using all over the place. So I told you about my cleanup task. Approvals almost everywhere, notifications for the same. The site catalog, which you saw in the update that Microsoft is providing, we've built a custom version of that where I'm working now because we're pulling site information from about 7 different environments, 2 online and 5 on-prem, and have them in a single catalog. So Flow is instrumental in tracking changes in status of those sites. So Flow's been a really important component of that. If you ever get a chance to see Dave Feldman speak about how we govern, how Shire governs their intranet, and how the catalog of sites works, I would recommend it. It's a really good governance piece. I know we got accepted at SP TechCon in Boston in the fall. So a couple of the takeaways. I think you got most of them, right? Really simple and fast to build and test. We talked about some of the limitations. It's preview, so we know it will get better, but we don't know the upgrade path. I suspect we'll see more investment in Power Apps than we will something as specific as Flow, but that one's a little less clear to me. In Flow, it's the power and versatility and the constant drumbeat of new connectors that we see in Flow. And SharePoint lists and Power Apps, the promise of more power, more versatility, and more future-proof. So that was, business problem. Scenario 1, the walls and the roadblocks we hit. Scenario 2, and scenario 3. I'll open it up to questions. I don't have a great deal more. It's a little tight. So it was a kind of a quicker presentation. It felt like to me, at least. What else can we or should we cover for you?
On the scoring piece,
Yeah.
I know that you would love this part. Azure Functions would have probably been helpful for, in the flow, you could pass the survey to an Azure function that would take care of the scoring.
That would do the sum. Okay. Yep.
Do all the scoring.
Yep.
And you could generalize it so that it knows it's going to get N questions and it's going to do something.
Yep.
So that could be an engine.
Yep.
That's code.
I was going to say, would it for a non-developer? How would someone get access? I'm curious because I think some of you in the room are devs and engineers, and others of you in the room are from the business, and I'm definitely from the business side. So
Azure Functions would be writing code.
Sure.
So you'd be writing basically an HTTP service that would accept some data and spit something back.
Yep.
So if you were going to be doing a bunch of these, writing that little engine, which is, it's not very hard.
It's not a hard function to write. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
But you have to have access to Azure. You have to have the permissions and the rights to do stuff.
Yep.
And you have to do it. But the point is, if you were actually going to build a whole bunch of these things, that might be a brick that you.
Because it's reusable, I can point to it from all manner of flows. If only I knew some good developers.
I could probably put an ad in the paper.
So I've got a solution for that from from a non-developer side, which would be, you could just use 2 calculated columns and have the first one be the subtotal, 1 through 16, and then your second one can bring in the results of that column, and then add 18 through 24, or 18 through 25.
Oh, yeah.
And then neither of those exceed your
Then I can
16.
use the flow, I can just chunk it basically,
Right.
and use an add
And it's
function for
all-
those.
Right.
But if I do that, I'm already using SharePoint anyway. Right, I'm
Well,
creating.
whichever, so it wasn't clear to me, what were you using that had the cap of the 16 iterations?
Just trying to do the scoring in Flow without writing it out to a
Okay,
SharePoint
so
list.
you could do that within Flow then?
Yeah.
Without ever taking it out, you could just subtotal it, take that total, send it into a variable, and then call up that variable in another
Okay.
calculation.
Or write another flow that takes 5 questions and gives you the answer. I mean, there
Yeah.
are lots of different
Yeah.
ways you
Yeah.
can break it up into components.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Good.
So-
This is a good, this is a good postmortem.
yeah.
Because I think there's 20 ways we could have solved this problem, right? I ran into the 3 that were easiest and came most naturally to me, but this is good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Nicole?
Can you talk about scale, right? So you said you only had a couple hundred or so responses. So
Yeah.
how would you scale this for if you needed to go to a larger portion of the organization? Like, what would you do differently?
I feel like this precise thing, I'm thinking about how, I don't think there's issues with how the flow scales. I don't think there's issues with how the forms scale in terms of like concurrency. Like I think Office 365 and the elasticity that's kind of inherent in the cloud manages that for me. I think the SharePoint list would get unwieldy with a large volume, but if I'm scrubbing it out, if I have 25,000 people taking a survey in the same day,
Yeah.
that list is going to get ugly fast. If I have a smattering, if I have 20,000 scattered throughout the year relatively evenly, I don't see a scale issue.
Big lists are not as much of a problem as they used to be.
Right,
I
exactly.
think that would be.
Is there a limit? Is there a number limit?
To what can go on a SharePoint
Yeah.
list? It's different from what it was, right? That classic kind of 5,000 item
It's
list.
been 30 million for a long time.
Oh, okay.
Right.
And the
But
5,000.
5,000 is in a view.
5,000 is, yeah,
in a
it's
view.
just to view it, so
Yeah.
it's just storing it, as long as you don't summon it as a view.
Yeah.
25,000 responses and you were just acting on each one separately, you wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah.
I have a colleague who ran into a cap. There was something she wanted to use forms for, but it was too long. She had more questions than forms could handle.
Probably not a good survey then.
I forget what that cap was. I entered, she hasn't got back to me.
Oh, funny. Yeah.
It was a pretty high number. It was like, I seem to recall it was around 250
The
questions.
biggest limit is the person's patience. No one's gonna use that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they were doing.
Unless it's a final exam or something.
They were looking to use it to conduct audits of the stores. This was for a major retail chain.
Yeah.
Interesting.
She went.
Yes.
So question about using flow in production. It seems to work well in smaller use cases. We've seen it fail randomly when putting a lot of throughput through them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, in your production implementation, do you have a chance to go back into like the flow history and see what percentage were successful versus needs to be manually restarted?
Yeah, the volume of ours is low enough that we haven't seen any fail. That's not to say that there won't be, right, or that there haven't been for other flows, but I also haven't seen enough breadth of flows. Like my else case is pretty narrow and simple. The other folks who are building them for much more sophisticated things may have a lot more to weigh in. And does anybody else here have experience with that? Mark or Mike?
2,000 flow limit per user per month, so around 2,000 flows.
Yep.
You can answer 2,000 surveys, but
Yeah.
in 1 month. But you might hit that if you've got lots of surveys going through, lots of
It's
surveys.
cool.
It's cool,
So,
but yeah, it's very unlikely.
Yeah.
And that's a licensing thing, right? They'll just charge you more for it.
Do you find that workflows do that? They just don't happen? Or do you see it's worse than that, or is it?
So we've been using flow since the beta, and some of these experiences were worse in the beginning of the beta.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seemed that for no rhyme or reason, things would just not progress. We're seeing similar behavior with Azure Logic Apps, which uses a similar engine.
Yeah.
But at least with Logic Apps, do their more detailed messages and set up alerts.
Do the flows not fire? Do they not
finish? Do they not?
They usually begin, but then they error out. And when they error out, there does seem to be a good way to get notified.
As they're erroring out in a place you don't think it should be an error, like they're just dying, or?
In some cases, they're calling logic function apps. In some cases, they're calling the SharePoint REST APIs. Things that should be pretty, reliant.
Well, we get timeouts.
Yeah. So, just curious about those experiences.
Yeah, is that a yellow light in your assessment? Is there some sort of breakpoint below which you say, yeah, it's probably going to be fine, versus, or is it not a function of volume and it's a function of kind of mission criticality of the kind of?
Mission criticality is how we're looking at it so
Okay.
far.
Okay.
But I'd be more than happy to hear other experiences.
Yeah, and I'm happy to go back and get feedback from my team, from people who are creating these for all these other use cases. You seeing it too, David?
No, all my flows have been running swimmingly well.
Okay.
So, yeah, no, it's been, my flows have been quite happy. But there are some error handling options in there as well, to give you more detail.
Did you have a question? Okay.
Hi.
Please.
Two questions. One is, in the survey, it was just scoring. Do you have any open-ended questions or comments, or just scoring?
In this survey, it was just scoring. I think I had the ability to create them.
The second question is, where you had that 25-question dilemma, do you feel that as the lessons learned, whether or not you could tip that down to less questions?
That was not my call. If there was a third party who was engaged to build that survey, a great treasure that went into that, a lot of calories went into that. So I was basically served up, this is the survey that we want to put out there. I get no editorial input on that survey whatsoever. I mean, brevity's the soul of wit, right? 25 questions is a lot, but if that's what they give us as a requirement, that's the way we had to take it. Now, having learned a couple of different options to roll those up more easily, 25 is no big deal. 25 is no big deal to me. It might be the survey taker, right? But I never felt compelled to be like, can you give me a 16 question survey? That wasn't an option for me.
No, I meant in terms of lessons learned from the responses and everything else, thinking that, oh, gee, some of these answers, now that we look at those questions after the feedback,
Yeah.
we could have probably thrown a couple of them off.
I don't think so. I think the questions were very highly thought out and very highly engineered, so they're not prone to do that. Mark?
That makes me think of a question. I know with like SurveyMonkey and stuff, if you create a survey and sort of lock it down and let people start answering it, you can't change it. You can't change the questions. You realize you forgot to put an answer 4 in question 16. Can you edit midway?
Yes.
They may have fixed it.
Define midway. Like, do people have an instance of the survey
Well, I
open?
don't know. I mean,
like that, or
so
So
I
if they
guess
haven't completed it, you can change.
I guess each form is an independent. Each form filling instance is an independent action that spits data out.
yeah.
So anything that processes the data would have to be aware of that change.
Yep.
But the form itself, you don't like lock it and then have people start filling it out and then not be able to change it midstream, right?
I don't think I have the ability to lock it. I thought I could go in and change that.
You can set an expiration
Yeah.
for the questionnaire itself,
Right.
where it can't be started or anything with that. But as long as you're within the time frame of the active period of the form, each respondent can go back and change their answers.
I'm thinking more from a design standpoint. So if Mike realizes he left out a question, can he add it midstream?
I think so.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's locked down at all.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
But
completely.
you have to handle.
But it'll make your
there's no answer to
comparability
this question.
when you're doing those analytics on scoring. It'll make your comparability in that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
You got other problems. But
Right. Yeah.
Which question did you leave out?
David?
Question online, are you able to see the responses in the form view?
Let me see if I can pull up a form that I have in my own environment to answer that question. Do I have forms?
You can, even to see an individual, all their answers.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what the
The short answer is yes.
the short answer is yes.
Yes.
I don't think it's the same pre-form view, you get the stat.
Form with answers to
there's a couple of ways you can view. You can view like an overall summary. They give you the cool little pie charts and stuff. Or you can choose a specific respondent, and then you can see the form as they fill it out.
I'm going to say, here's my submission, 2-question form on how ethical are you. I am hella ethical. Oh, sorry, it's not in the right. Gotcha. I'm going to very delicately do this. Okay, good. So I'm just previewing. How ethical are you? I'm hella ethical. So now I can see the response that I created. Now, can I see them by individual? Interview answers.
Then it gives you a list of each person that's answered. See that drop down at the top?
This guy, yep. Okay, so if there were multiples.
It will give you a list of each person that's responded to it.
Okay.
That would get unwieldy with a high volume.
Yeah, things that don't scale, right?
If you send the survey out, not requiring them to log in, so an anonymous survey, that drop down says anonymous for everybody.
For everybody.
So you don't know who's surveyed. You don't know which
Yep.
I've never done an anonymous one. Yeah.
Although interestingly, at volume, I would toggle from, I wouldn't use the people view, I'd use the questions view. Because then if I toggle the questions view, it'll ask me by question, and then I can still go in and see one response.
Like a simple question on formatting. What formatting capabilities have you got? Can you make it bold, italic? Can you add a little hyperlinking to a question? Ooh, I want the picture in.
You know? Yeah. See, do you see the little piece at the top right here which says preview? That's the short answer to your question. Yeah, you can certainly theme forms up.
You can also do a picture. You can do a picture for each question.
Can you?
Yep. You can insert a question a picture for each question. If you go to just put that in edit mode. Yeah, there you go. See the picture icon right there?
Yeah.
Just click on that. You can import an image.
But can you put a picture and a caption under?
Well, the picture, a piece of text in it, you use something to put the heading section.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can put pictures for each question, and then you can put one picture up at the top for the title as well.
Oh.
And you can
That's pretty good. Yeah.
I'm looking to see if I have any new formatting capabilities, but I don't. Like I basically, yeah.
So you can embed forms in a modern page, right? In SharePoint?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
So
You get that scrolliness that's not
But
great.
you can do all the fancy other stuff in a SharePoint.
In a separate
page.
column.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a column side by each.
Your form in SharePoint and do everything there, and then just drop your form into a widget into the page.
Yeah. I think that would be unpleasant in terms of syncing the scrolling.
Really interact well.
It's not as bad as you would think. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It's doable.
Yep. Andrew?
I think it also has, I'm trying to remember mine not there. I think it has a limitation I think you can move questions once you've created them, but you can't move those choices.
You can't reorder these choices?
Yeah, I'm remembering I had to recreate all of them, so it's not particularly.
Yeah, I remember that too. What I did,
If you have the Likert scales,
if you have the Likert scale, the ability to copy question 1 to question 2 to question, that was
But if
easy.
you put like 15 different choices and then there's a whole order, you're.
That's ugly.
Yeah.
And then you have branching on top of that, it gets uglier, probably. Somehow this turned into group therapy about forms. It's awesome. I love it. So Jen, tell me about your parents.
Well, so if you hit preview right now, what I'm wondering is, will the image show up and the how ethical would you say you are?
Just making sure I save everything the way I thought I would. Yep, it's required. I cannot have multiple answers. I've toggled that off. This is worth 4 points. These are my options. Okay, so I just wanted, before I messed with that.
Okay, so that makes me feel much happy because that's something that in 2010 I couldn't do. It was a very frustrating thing.
What were we trying to do?
I was trying, people would have a picture that they wanted to have people react to,
Uh-huh.
and I couldn't get the picture in there, and the text of how do you feel about this, or
Yeah.
whatever it was, I can't
Yep.
remember.
Yep.
But it was frustrating, because I had to actually say to them, "Oh,
Yeah. Totally. This reminds me a lot of Sway. If any of you have used Sway in Office 365, like the formatting is you get what you get and you don't get upset. But it's mobile friendly. It's really simple to create and use. So if your requirements match up well with what Forms does out of the box, it's a no-brainer.
I'm guessing it's not accessible yet, like to the 508 kinds of standards. So they have to do some more work.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of that. Like a low vision or an auto.
Screen reader.
Yeah, screen reader. Have not seen it.
You just dropped an image on there and
It didn't prompt me for any meta tags or anything like that.
you're
Yeah.
gonna have
Alternate
to do
text.
that, pass through it, and it's gonna.
Yep.
Before they can take that preview on.
Yeah, it's a good point because Microsoft is super committed to that too, right? Yeah.
And I think for low tech, we've been able to sell some projects on using forms, but they won't go near I won't go near Power Apps. But I mean, give somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, which we don't, that you can sell them on forms, because if they already do surveys or survey monkey, they know what branching is, they know what a liker is.
Right.
They can intuitively figure this out.
Yeah.
But we only use it internally now. They're not
Have-
afraid of that.
Have you tied any of your forms to flows? Internally?
Not yet.
Okay.
Those are
That's-
dirty words in my Power App.
Right.
Taboo.
Right. Yeah, one of the first things I want to do when this project is over is I'm going to go take Laura Rogers' boot camp in Power Apps and Flow because there's so much capability there that I just want to.
The syntax you can
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be,
For sure.
You're floundering unless
it's
there's a
codeless.
template.
Yeah, so is SharePoint.
Right. So is there any other questions? You asked a lot, and thank you for your engagement because, like, hey, we're all making our way through this together, and I did stuff that's not particularly groundbreaking. It's just early on, and I'm willing to talk about the challenges and the limitations that we face. So,
Did you try the octopus theme?
the octopus thing?
Yeah, there's an octopus.
I want to know what it looks like.
You want to see the octopus thing?
This green thing is everybody who shows a flow.
Shows.
Form shows this green thing.
Well, let's.
I know that's that you had some really awful themes.
Others.
Who comes up with this?
There you go.
You get a lot of them.
It's the enchantment under the sea
If you
theme.
work in an aquarium, I guess this is perfect.
This is
Well, you might want to leg up on everybody.
where your projects underwater. But so to come back to.
So, since we have some time, I have a use case that I can share for what we used forms for. We did something where we were just trying to see if rollout for Outlook 2016 was solving some headaches that a certain client was having. And we put together a pilot group, rolled it out to them. I put together real quick in forms, and this was the very first form I'd ever created, a survey that said, give me a scale 1 to 10. What was your overall experience like with Outlook 20? And then the same exact question, scale of 1 to 10, what was your experience like with Outlook 2016? That gave us immediate hard numbers to compare an improvement. So we had a metric that we could actually report back to management and say, here's what our experience is. We've seen a 4-point improvement in people's experience with Outlook from this to that. And from that standpoint, Forms was just, I spent a ton of time just kind of playing with it because I had never used it before, but soup to nuts, it would have taken me a half an hour to put together the whole thing.
Yeah, Michael, I added that. That's surveying users after a rollout, after a service desk incident, after a workshop.
Yeah.
Super easy.
Super.
Yeah, doesn't require a lot of sophistication.
Would it cover the use case of, I think of them as USA Today polls, you know, there are 3 answers, you pick one, and then you see a little graph on the internet homepage. You could do the.
You want to share total responses, see what
Maybe
what
not the
other
graph, but at
responders,
least, you know, like here's the question of the day.
Yeah.
You embed that, because I know you said scrolling's a problem and stuff.
But-
Forms do that.
Well, because can you embed the results page that you get,
Just
right?
the question.
Oh, just the
If
question?
you just do the question, that would work okay, right?
Right.
that you can do.
Yeah, like a one question. There's not a lot of scrolliness to that, right?
And then when someone answers, can you redirect them to something? Then they give you the
I
answer.
think I've only seen you get the generic, thank you for using Microsoft Forms. Would you like to create a form? I haven't seen a redirect at the end of
You
that.
can do a redirect, and even if there isn't a redirect natively to that, you could just put it in the URL that you use to share out the form.
I don't know if that works.
Yeah, that would be, I'd like to try that though. I think that's a cool thing. Like the question of the day, and when you answer it, you get here's what everybody
Because
said.
it gives you the back end that if they answer wherever.
And you get it, and there's a nice out of the box graphical, here are all the answers. It's just a question of how do I make the redirect work, right? We should try that. I'll spend some time on that.
So there is a poll integration with Teams where you can do the one-off quick polls and it shows the instant response immediately in Teams.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's a widget for the SharePoint side that would do similar, but I know it's there in Teams.
I don't recall seeing one.
Is that using forms?
Yeah, it uses the forms. in
Does it really?
Teams. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
And it shows the results. Like
Yeah.
Just like camera.
Yeah.
Just like Slack.
Slack is what I was thinking. She said Yammer, but I thought Slack. Yeah.
Camera also does polls.
Yeah, it's just like Yammer's polling is what Forms does. in
Yeah,
Teams.
it's instant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I want to try that when we're done here. We'll forward all of you with that. Anything else, David? I'm good. Thank you for thanks for sharing with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Break stuff from here. Thank you very much. Sweet. So I just today spun up a form for a sign-up sheet. They needed to allow 58 people to sign up for an event. If you went over 58, you'd be putting on a waiting list. So we use forms with a flow, and we stored everything in an Excel file. And then when the form just queried if they would hit 58, we'd send them an email saying you're now on a waiting list, and we wrote that to a different part in the Excel file. So the admins could then manage waiting lists for actual attendees.
That's the
All
form
the
that
forms.
58 David Lozzies are working on?
Yeah. That fun one I tweeted today. Cool. Thank you very much, Mike. That was awesome. We are going to run through a couple more announcements and then raffle and go drinking. So other community events, there are user groups other than ours. They're not as cool as ours, but they do exist. Feel free to check them out. Hartford just recently changed from a SharePoint user group to an O365 user group. So if you're in that area, they have theirs runs the same night as ours. So they have a session tonight with completely drawing a blank on her name.
DRC?
No, somebody else. I forget. Anyway, it doesn't matter because it's tonight. So. Some upcoming events, I kind of went through and just perused some of those user groups. So there's a Azure boot camp coming up this Saturday. It's a hands-on event. Bring your laptops, bring your Azure accounts, and you're going to learn a bunch of stuff. There's a PowerShell user group, April 26th. An App in a Day workshop coming May 9th. That is hosted here at Microsoft, and myself and one of my colleagues will be presenting that. If you were at my session last month, that was 2 hours long, we're going to take that and make it 8 hours long. But it's hands-on. You're going to build Power Apps. You're going to build flows. May 10th, Andrew Connell is coming to the Granite State user group. Is he actually coming to that, or is that remote? I couldn't tell. All right. I hope so. And then SharePoint conference is coming up in May. Anybody going to the SharePoint conference? 1, 2, 3? Cool. Awesome. If any of you want to come back and share about that, let us know. That's Vegas, right? Yeah. Awesome. Oh, are we missing anything? Yes, Dimitri.
So we do have SP TechCon coming up in August. And
Yes.
all of the user groups all the SharePoint Office 365 user groups you saw on the last slide, we're all coming together to hold one massive user group session at SP TechCon, which will be in Boston. More details will come as we figure out the details on our end. But besides SPTechCon coming, there's also one more request. The organizers of SPTechCon are looking for any nonprofits in the greater Boston area that might be interested in learning more about how to leverage Office 365 to solve various challenges. You don't necessarily have to have Office 365 today in order to take advantage, but if you're interested, come talk to me and I'll put you in touch with the right people to learn more about that. Mark, I don't know if you want to add
I'm
anything.
gonna say that a different way.
Go ahead.
Just because I think of it a different way.
Go ahead.
So they're actually gonna have a challenge day where people, attendees of the conference, can work on a problem together. So the nonprofits will bringing us the problems, bringing the conference the problems. So if you know, and so they don't need to have anything, they don't need to have Office 365 or whatever, but they would have people working on their problem, and at the very least, they get some interesting ideas. They could walk away with something useful.
It's like a hackathon one?
Yeah, it's like a nonprofit hackathon.
Yeah.
Cool. So like, there's a school up in New Hampshire, Plymouth State, I think it is. North New Hampshire. They're bringing in a couple of problems that they have. So, if you know anybody who has something to do with a nonprofit, that might benefit from that. They're open.
Awesome.
And since I'm talking, we're starting to rev up the engine for SharePoint Saturday New England at the end of October. So it'll be about the same time as last year. So hopefully you guys will all show up then.
Oh, yeah.
I was just going to mention that the Boston Azure Boot Camp, if anyone's interested, it's full.
Oh, okay.
They're having one in Manchester that's the best seats.
Okay, awesome.
Cool.
All right. So next month we have none other than David Pileggi. He works over at Staples, runs their O365 stuff, and he'll be doing a case study called Greenfield to Culture. What does that mean? Nobody knows. You have to come. I like that title. Super vague. There's an actual description that we'll have on the website, so you'll have an idea, maybe. Cool. We like to open up this time for any questions. Anybody have any problems with Office 365? Have a quick question? Found something that's like, aha, it does this. I didn't know that, and want to share? Dimitri.
So we've had a number of clients come to us recently because they saw Microsoft advertising that you can do co-authoring using the full installed client on your machines. And they tried to do it, and it didn't work for them. So it kind of puzzled me because it actually worked for me. And what we realized is that Microsoft has two different channels for updates that are pushed into your Office 365. You're either on the semi-annual channel, which means you get an updated version of your Office clients every January and July, or you can be on the monthly channel, which means every month it basically updates with the latest and greatest. Most companies choose to keep their employees on the semi-annual, and the semi-annual does not yet have this functionality rolled out. So the ways to solve it are either to wait until July. In July, Microsoft will deploy that gradually across their clients, or switch to the monthly release, and then you can start taking advantage of that now.
Dimitri, how did you diagnose that? Did you compare version numbers?
A lot of Jack.
Sorry?
A lot of Jack Daniels. No, yeah, it was comparing version numbers, it was comparing Microsoft documentation, and it was really just diving deep into that. It's on my to-do list to write a quick blog post about it, but we are rebuilding our website at the moment, so I don't have a place to put this knowledge.
Cool. Yes?
I have a quick question. On the user side of Office 365, so a lot of this stuff is over my head, but on the user side, I've been getting this crazy error that's puzzling me a lot. Where if I'm working on an Excel document or a PowerPoint document, I get this error saying, in that document is actually located on my OneDrive. I get an error saying, fail to upload because you're not logged in. And obviously I'm logged in because I'm on Office 365. Then I click the link to log in, and it says, no, you must log in with a Microsoft personal account, not a Microsoft business account. What is going on there?
Is it a laptop or a desktop?
Laptop.
Close it and just huck it. That's what, yeah. No, I don't know. I get that all the time, and I just keep logging in and relogging in, and it works. I don't get the personal or business issue, though. But I get a login issue all the time. But I'm on like 4 different tenants.
Inside Excel, so if you go to your Office account, Excel, you're logged in and you're connected. And are you editing in the Excel desktop client, or are you editing?
Desktop client.
Yeah.
Desktop client.
Is this a personal 365 subscription or a business subscription?
Business.
And do you have the same username with the personal attached? Log in and say, do you want your personal business?
No, I don't think I've ever, I think maybe a long time ago, before we were Office 365, I had my personal OneDrive on it, but it's since gone and I have nothing logged into the personal Microsoft account.
I get that on a machine I have from a client, and they got all kind of wacko doodle security crap, so I just figure it's their nonsense.
Yeah.
But I get kicked out in Excel. You know, I'll be working on something, and it'll say, you need to log in. I'm like, I just logged in 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So I don't see it on my own machines, but I
Right.
see it on this one client machine. So I think that there's something different.
Right.
Some security layer.
I got a lot of nonsense.
Yeah, they may be, there may, I don't know if there's some kind of,
Yeah.
their login limit or thing that your. IT
Oh, it's a
folks
Mac.
can set, like, kick people out after.
God bless you.
No, because even when I tried to log in, it said you can't log in using your business account.
Yeah, that part's weird.
Yeah.
We had similar issues, and we had to clear out all the cache and save credentials to the machine. Not that it keeps the actual Microsoft cache saved accounts, like cities and password and stuff, clear all those out.
Credential manager.
So there's an actual
I don't know what
Microsoft
that
to
is.
clear out.
I see. But whatever that is.
Let's do it on Mac, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah. Next time it happens, take some screenshots.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I've got an interesting problem with the brand new communication site.
Hmm.
I've got a client, she was editing the page, she was now going away on vacation. I've come in and go, oh, this page is locked by some user. How do you unlock it?
Reset
Do
it.
it in publishing site, that would be easy. This communication site page is locked.
You're not gonna like my answer. Reset a password, log in this term, check it in. Not gonna like my answer. I have no idea. Dimitri's raising.
John, so it's just like it is in the traditional sites. If someone has a page checked out, you can discard their checkout, which means they lose anything that they've made since they last published.
Yeah. That makes more sense. But anyway, it wasn't obvious, there's no UI for it, and there's nothing that
She looks as more.
gonna go in. Yeah.
It's for checkout.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
Cool. Mike.
So I have an interesting issue that I ran into. I'm working with a new client that has Microsoft Teams. As a part of onboarding them, I created a team for them as well and invited them as guests. Everything was working honky-dory for several weeks until all of a sudden yesterday, they said that when they switched into my tenant to see my team, all of a sudden the drop-down to change tenants disappeared from Teams. It happened to 2 people at the same time
Feature.
in the company.
I've been seeing, there's a very long lag when you switch sometimes. And
Yeah.
It sort of disappears.
Hmm.
It's actually like recalculating or whatever.
Okay.
It does come back.
So I've heard 2 things about that. So one is that's actually a feature. Where they're making it not a requirement to switch tenants. And you could be on multiple teams at the same time. That's what I've heard.
Ooh.
And then I've also heard that the desktop client takes a long time to switch tenants, whereas the browser client is very quick.
So that's one of the things that I suggested to them, is I was like, just use the web client, and they had the same problem with web. Really?
I've also seen this issue appear sometimes when you switch between tenants that are on first release versus not first release. And sometimes I have to need to reload things on the back end, but it takes extra long to have this.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're actually biz tenant, not an enterprise tenant.
The last 2 updates to Teams for me and Julie, that I work with, it's just molasses. Like if we start doing an audio conference, everything in Teams just. So there's some performance thing going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's consistent.
So it sounds like they need to push it back update or something. something we need to
Research, I see that.
Cool.
Cool.
Is it, the data that's saved in Teams?
But that's,
The data that's saved, let's say you upload a video or photo or whatever to Teams, does that take away from the company's SharePoint base? Or
yeah,
Because it's.
yes, it counts towards your SharePoint.
not for the individual's OneDrive?
Correct.
So that's something, it's kind of, one of the things that we're a company of 500 people, and our IT manager has gotten 1.4 gigs or 1.4 terabytes in SharePoint, but every single person has a 1 terabyte OneDrive.
Hmm.
So, we're kind of forbidding people from using Teams, because if they start uploading a lot of content to Teams, that space is going to be not very quickly.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but you'll be working together.
You'll be getting your job done.
Yeah.
Wow.
Space is super cheap if you do hit the point where you have to add it on. It also pooled across the entire tenant.
Right.
So you can have one team that occupies 95% of your content storage.
Right.
And then 100 others that only occupy the remaining 5%.
I mean, if you're a movie making company and you're putting all your movies in,
Yeah,
you might.
You're a construction company and people
It
upload videos.
It all goes right into your
Yeah.
shared documents library and the SharePoint site behind, so you can manage those files just like you can.
You could start moving the videos back upstream. So there's,
Start putting your movies in the
document library.
So there's another option you could look at is using a different cloud provider, source provider. Right? You can add cloud storage to Teams, not just SharePoint, but I think Box, Google Drive, Cisco something. So if that storage is cheaper, or if you have an account over there as well, you can link to that, and then users can upload stuff through there.
I'm not, my IT manager.
And where are you on that terabyte now?
We're just starting, so this Saturday is the migration.
Yeah, they're not gonna.
When the needle starts to actually move away from zero.
All right, awesome. Anyone have experienced anything good with Office 365? There's a whole bunch of negative stuff. Nobody happy with Office 365? It is.
Yeah, pays my wife's.
My new client's actually using Teams. It's pretty
It's
awesome.
good. It's good.
That's why it was very disappointing that they got locked in my tab.
Yeah.
Anybody been using hub sites?
Not yet. They haven't rolled out to my tenant. I keep looking for them. I want to.
It's there. When you have if you're first release tenant, so first release for everyone, and I know you know that.
Yeah.
But not first release for users. Then it should be there, but you have to run PowerShell.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, so UI,
It's 2 lines of PowerShell.
Right.
It's very easy, and the article on lines how it works.
Okay.
Cool.
Mark, one thing about hub sites that I don't think it was super publicized is that you're limited to have about 50 in your tenants.
50.
Yeah.
So
For some reason, they think that no one would ever want a lot of hub sites. I think that's not going to be true. But that's a temporary. That's just
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of the data roll. I'm
sure.
you don't have a hub.
Yeah. Part of our challenge is that our intranet is called the hub. It was called the hub before hub sites came out, so now we're gonna have hub sites on the hub. In Boston, which is the hub of the
You have
universe.
all those hub web parts out of.
That's right, yeah, the P&P hub web parts.
I saw somebody writing about that. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, they have web parts for that already.
Right, exactly, I know, it's, so the nomenclature's not great. They were showing on the surface of it. It was helpful. Yeah. That's right.
Awesome.
Was I bad at naming something? Don't believe you.
Only relative to us.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone hiring or looking for work?
I'm always looking. SharePoint consultant, Office 365, they're all programming, so I can do that.
See that programming stuff?
Looking for a full-time SharePoint development position. He didn't ask me to say that here, so I won't give the name.